Hello, dear ones. Welcome to the Indigo Rose Lounge. This is the podcast, The Dance Between Love and Fear. And I am your host, Alyce Dylan, author, intuitive counselor, Reiki Master of 27 years, and surviving Indigo Adults. I think possibly the last one is the one that I'm proudest of because so many of us don't make it. Come take a seat. This is the space that I hold energetically for all of you. And this is the picture on the screen is kind of what it would look like, I think, more or less. But it's warm and cozy, and please take a seat, get comfy. I know you can't stay long, it's a busy day, but I thought we'd just chat quickly about the history. You know, people sometimes look at me like I've lost my mind a bit. I'm a bit crackers when I go on about the sixth sense. And so let's just lay some history down because I need to be clear about why I'm so passionate about the subject matter. So just in the recent history, let's just go recent past now. World War II, the Nazis were, who knows what they were really all about. But they had this branch that really studied, especially the Romani people, who were very sixth-sensed, Romanis in general, and possibly because they grew up in an environment where it was okay to be. So Romani people tended to have an elevated sixth sense, but there were lots of others. Anyone that they could find who was perceptive, intuitive, had extrasensory perception of any kind, they studied them, and we know about this. There are books, there is research, there is history about their obsession with not only the occult, but the mystical and the otherworldly. Yeah, and then in more recent time, perhaps since then, and maybe as an outcome of Operation Paperclip, who knows, we know that DARPA had, or perhaps still has, whole divisions committed to or focused on extrasensory perception, people who do distance viewing, people who do, research on things like psychometry, any extension of the mind. What is the capacity of the sixth sense? What can we do? Often, obviously, an organization with DARPA will be looking at the weaponization of that. How can they weaponize this perception? But they're also not so, well, none of it's really pleasant, but the least pleasant, perhaps, is the idea of how to manipulate whole societies, how to brainwash people. We know about this. This is not news. These are not rabbit holes. These are not conspiracy theories. These are things that are in the public eye. You just go and do some research. You'll find it, what DARPA's been working with, and that from people who work there. Okay. So you've got that going on. So when I was growing up as a small child, there would often be these books that would be passed around, or dinner conversations about extrasensory perception. People were talking about it, and books were being written about it. And it was this new era. It's kind of post-hippie era. The hippie experience of out there and strange and extrasensory became more mainstream. And people started to harness the idea of, well, does thought create reality? And how can I think differently? And those are all harnessing the sixth sense, because the sixth sense is received, and thoughts are received through the sixth sense. And we also create thoughts. But thoughts and imagination is a very powerful place of creativity. And so a lot of exploration of that started. And I remember being surrounded by alternative thought as a child. People, oh, did you hear? This person wrote a book about this, and oh, he must. I think the books Think and Grow Rich were out, and books like that. Also strange practices. So, getting fit, standing still. I can't remember what that's called now. Brain brain blank. But this idea of all you have to do is stand up against a wall and flex certain muscles, and or stand in a doorway and push out. Never mind. I'll get it. There were strange new things that were coming out, and then suddenly in the 80s and 90s, everything went quiet. Quiet. There were branches that started branching off, coming up with whole new theories. But the mainstream consolidated to very defined band. Things like Deepak Chopra was still acceptable. Uh, things like Paulo Coelho. These types, but they were subtle. They were subtle explorations, a lot in story form. But these ideas of uh, things like Seth and Abraham and that type of thing became a branch going outwards. Cuckoo land stuff for mainstream thinkers. And so this whole idea of the growth of humanity and what was available to him, that kind of died. And then in the 90s, the idea of the Indigo Child. So now the Indigo Child books, the original Indigo Child was published late 60s, early 70s. And so the introduction of the idea that more and more children were being born with the sixth sense, with per extrasensory perception, with abilities beyond the standard normal ability. So that comes out in the late 60s, early 70s. And then, like I say, this whole thing goes quiet. In the mainstream, there are lots of other practices that kind of branch off. But in the mainstream, nothing more is said. Extrasensory perception, no, sorry, doesn't. The white coats go quiet. And then in the 90s, they all decide that, oh, these indigo children, these extrasensory perception people, no, they're not gifted, because we were starting to get that momentum going, that there were these gifted kids. No, they're not gifted. They're neurodivergent. They undiagnosed ADD, ADHD. That's what they are. So throw them in the box over there under neurodivergent. We've got a list of products that we can feed them, petroleum-based chemical products, obviously, that will shut off that sixth sense and make them normal. So it's fine now. It's fine now. They've been recategorized. And then recently, the white coats came out with this, oh, we've discovered this new thing. There's a sixth sense, and the sixth sense is a person's hidden sense of the function of their own body. And somehow this is a brand new discovery. And so now they're actually actively rebranding the sixth sense into some nefarious sense of ourselves and how our body's working. Okay. So this is where I get a little hyper about this, because there was a trajectory. There was research being conducted. They were weaponizing these extrasensory perception. There was a discovery happening. The Indigo Child came out and said that these children are being born in numbers, not just one or two, in numbers. These children with extrasensory perception are being born. And rather than address this issue in psychology or in wherever, acknowledge it at least. No, it gets shelved in a box called neurodivergent and with a medication label. Okay, here's another idea. That the last 200 years, mankind, there's always been sixth sense people. And in the last 200 years, the majority of mankind have started moving this way. As people start regular prayer, as they start meditation, their sixth sense opens, or we're just born that way. And these are the indigo children, and we're growing in number, and that needs to be addressed. Not by calling us cuckoo, but actually by understanding what it is that we need from society and how we need to address society. So there's nothing wrong with us. We're not, we are on the leading edge of the evolution of mankind, and we need to, it's, that theory of whoever names a thing owns a thing. Well, they've labeled us now and boxed us, and that really doesn't sit well with me. So there we go. I would like us very much to take our label back. I would like us very much to say we are the sixth sense. We are here, and we will discover what the potential of this is together. And we'll give it names. Thank you very much. We will not be labeled by others. So there we go. Very passionate one today. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Love, always.